Thanks so much, Tim, for coming in.
Oh, thanks for the invitation.
Yeah, I was really excited to reach out. And, as I said, I'm just getting started with this. So the first couple people, I feel really grateful that they've said yes. So I do appreciate it.
Well, I'm just getting started myself. So, the exposure certainly helps me. And it's, it's something new and different. I've never done this before. So let's see what happens.
Yeah, I'm excited. I've enjoyed it so far, and I think you will too. So I wanted to actually start with, kind of going back to the beginning of life for you, where you were born, where you were raised, where life began.
I was born in Norwalk, Connecticut.
Okay.
My parents moved down to Kinnelon, New Jersey, up in the sort of Passaic, Morris County border when I was very young, so I grew up there. Went to Kinnelon High School, all that. From there I went to Stevens Tech for a year for computer science. I did so well after that year that I went in the Navy for 10 years.
Wow.
Failed out miserably. Well, Kinnelon is this very, at the time was this very bucolic suburban town, and I suddenly found myself, a 10-minute walk, a 10-minute train ride, and 25 cents away from Manhattan.
Mm-hmm.
So I had a good time there, but I didn't learn an awful lot about computer science at Stevens. But
so tell me about. So you were in Kinnelon from the time you were pretty young?
3 or 4. Yeah.
Oh, okay. So you don't have memories from Connecticut?
Nothing.
Because Norfolk is supposed to be, that's a really nice area of Connecticut, right? So, or you wouldn't remember.
I couldn't tell you.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I guess the same is sort of true for Kinnelon. I mean, I haven't been in that town myself, but I've heard that it's a beautiful area. And
it is. It's winding roads, and there's lakes, and there's old forests. There's actually a beautiful county park up there now that never used to be there when I was growing up.
Oh,
called
really?
Pyramid Rock, and it's these glacial erratics, these rocks that the glaciers moved and to some place where they didn't belong. So there's a couple of them with rocks that are, sitting, enormous boulders sitting on little tiny rocks. It's very cool.
I don't think I've been there. I didn't even know that existed. I never heard of it.
I never heard of it either until friends of ours found it.
Okay, and we go hiking up there all the time, so that's cool. A new place to try out. So growing up, what was growing up like? Were you an explorer? Did you go out and kind of get dirty in town and out and about? Or
we had we had a fairly decent sized piece of property. I'm not sure how big, to be honest with you, but it was surrounded by woods, and there was a creek that ran through the back, and so we were always outside from dawn to dusk every day.
Mm-hmm.
The only way my mother could get us home was she had a bell that she would ring, because otherwise we were just out running wild the whole time, playing hide and seek or flashlight tag or building dams on the creek or skating on the creek.
Did you guys play capture the flag? That was big when I was growing up.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. I don't know if the kids still play that, but that's cool. So you had siblings or the neighborhood kids?
Both. I have older brother and an older sister.
Okay.
My brother's 5 years older than I am. My sister's 2, so I spent more time playing with her than him.
Okay,
but,
you were the youngest.
But then, we had neighbors across the street that I was in school with. And,
okay. And school wasn't your thing, like from K to 12, like you weren't really
no, I didn't like school. I sit and I think about, with the impact COVID has had on schooling right now, and I'm wondering whether I would have liked it better to have to do remote or not.
Mm-hmm.
Just, it wasn't me.
I think in the beginning, I have multiple lives, and so I work in a high school as well, and in the beginning, the kids were excited.
Yeah.
They really wanted that freedom to just stay home all the time, and now they realize how much they crave the individual, physical contact and attention from people.
Yeah. Well, I find as I sit and look back on it, when I take classes professionally, I learn much better in person
Mm-hmm.
than I do on trying to learn it off of a computer, just because the emotion of interacting with the different people help fixate those concepts in your brain a lot tighter.
Absolutely. I totally agree. The dynamics of the people in the room help you kind of understand. So when you were in school, was it tough? Like you didn't really care so much about it? You felt that the teachers weren't like what was difficult about school for you?
I just didn't like it. I didn't like the environment. I found most of the things that we were asked to do fairly mundane.
And they're still learning everything this day.
I'm living in the shadow of my brother and sister who were, both National Honor Society graduates, and I wasn't that kid.
So how was that like at home? Like how were your parents, knowing that your older siblings were academically inclined and motivated? What was it like for you with your parents?
I was fine. They knew I was a different person, I think, fairly early on.
Okay.
My father would always tell the story of, we'd go to this community pool, and my brother and sister be splashing off by themselves, and I'd have 10 friends around me over at the deep end.
Just hanging out.
Just hanging out, having fun. So
they let you be you.
They did. They absolutely did.
That's a big thing, I think, because, I think a lot of parents will have some preconceived notions about what their kid is supposed to do or be or grow up to be, and
right.
allowing you to be yourself probably allowed you to go down many paths that maybe you wouldn't have if they had expectations for you.
Yeah, no, for sure. And it's funny because my father was born in Canada and immigrated. Met my mother in high school.
Okay.
He was from Niagara Falls, Ontario. She was from Niagara Falls, New York, and they met at a basketball game.
I never knew people were from Niagara Falls. I thought it was just like a place you go to to see the falls.
But he went to college in Ohio at Kenyon College.
Okay.
He did his undergraduate work, and both my brother and sister went there.
Oh wow!
And I had no desire to go to Ohio to do anything.
Wow. It's so interesting. So your parents got together in high school and stayed together. Obviously, I'm assuming there was no break. And
they stayed together till the early '80s.
Oh, okay.
And then they got divorced. And
okay, you guys were older at that point, or
I was in high school. My brother and sister were both gone in college, so I was the only one left at home when that happened.
Okay, and how was that like?
It pretty well sucked.
Yeah. I would assume for most people. Were you expecting it?
As I sit and think back on it now and think about the years leading up to it, I would tell you no, I wasn't. It didn't surprise me, but I wasn't expecting it, I guess, because there was a lot of tension that was rolling around, and
yeah.
And I think when you're that age and you're as much of a naive goober as I was at the time, you just sort of take it as normal, and suddenly you realize it's not.
That's true, because unless you're in, which you're not, in intimate settings with friends and seeing their parents, you have nothing to really compare it to.
Right.
Yeah. So what things did you take away from their relationship, good and bad, that like have helped you shape maybe your own? I didn't know we were going to even go on this topic, but it's interesting to me.
There's some things that just I have to think about this. There's some things that I definitely take with it. My mother was very protective. She was a stay-at-home mom.
Okay.
Probably last of the generation of stay-at-home moms, at least in this part of the world. And as I said, she was very overprotective of us. And so I with my kids, I tend to do the same thing. And my wife, Sue, is almost the exact opposite. I think they were raised ferally. So she's willing to let the kids try pretty much anything, as long as it's legal and isn't going to get somebody hurt or isn't going to hurt, you know what I mean?
Right.
And so one of my youngest son, Thomas, one of his fondest memories is in Bradley Beach, where we live, they remade the fountain in town.
Yes.
And he just wanted to get up on the fountain and walk on the wall.
Okay.
And potentially fall in, of course. and he just is always, he told us this one time, he was so thankful for Sue for saying, well, go ahead. You might get wet, but go ahead.
Allowing him to take the risk.
Yeah.
And probably something that maybe has shaped, it was a small moment, but maybe many of those small moments have shaped a little bit of how he kind of
absolutely.
engages
I think
in life.
I think it's all of those things that shape.
Yeah.
You know, I don't think you know truly what shapes you. You know, which is why I was having a little challenge with that question.
Yeah.
Because
there's so many things.
There's all the little nudges that happen along the way that don't mean anything at the time.
Right. Yeah, and I'm sure that you don't, like you're saying, you kind of don't always know when you're doing something that's affected by or results from something you experience and you don't know.
Right.
Like some way you're interacting maybe with your wife, it has been influenced by seeing your parents, but you may or may not even know.
Right. Right.
Yeah. Are there ever times that you do say, oh yeah, this was a way that I saw my parents do something that I liked or didn't like, and then you do kind of consciously think about that with your own relationship with your spouse?
No, I don't think I do. You know, as I said, I've always been my own person relative to everybody else in the family. And I see that a lot more in my brother and my sister.
Okay.
The way they do things, interact with their spouses and their kids.
You see more
of my parents in them.
Okay. Good and bad.
Just, you know,
everything.
It just is what it is.
Yeah. So what, like if someone's listening, you know, you've had experience. How long have you been with your spouse now?
We met at a New Year's Eve party, 1986, going into 1987,
oh, wow.
and we've been married since 93.
Okay, so together like 34-ish years?
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
Long time.
I know, because I was born around that time. So what would your advice be? What's the secret to a good relationship?
Well, you have to listen. You have to communicate. People talk a lot about, you know, mutual reaching. How do I want to say this? When big decisions happen, whether it's careers, whether it's where you're going to live, all of these things, frequently it's not a matter of reaching a compromise. It's somebody accepting the loss and going where you're going. And the trick, I'm serious, I'm absolutely serious. And the trick is to make sure that nobody loses too often.
Okay. So being able to balance out like sort of the score without keeping score.
Right,
but...
right. You know, exactly.
Yeah.
You know, I worked quite a few years in the commercial nuclear power industry.
Yeah.
And worked at Oyster Creek. I've worked at Salem and Hope Creek down in South Jersey, and a bunch of the other plants in the region. But there's jobs for my particular specialty that are all over the country, and some of them were pretty good jobs. And but Sue was not going to move.
She gave you some parameters.
She gave me some parameters, and she. But you know, it's.
Yeah, it worked out.
It did work out.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's important too. I like that, because I think, you know, it's easy to see, oh, okay, you know, maybe there's not always a compromise.
Right.
You know, like it's easy to say, oh, compromise, but you can't, if it's a matter of where you live, it's not really a compromise. You kind of just have to pick one. And
right. It's not like what color you're going to paint a room.
It's a little more consequential than that. Yeah. And so how did you I have so many questions. I love that. I love that advice. It's something that I think is helpful. So how did you guys pick New Jersey and Bradley Beach? Where were you living originally when you met, and then how did Bradley Beach happen?
Well, when we met, I was in the Navy. I was stationed up in Groton, Connecticut, and she was still in her undergraduate school up in Colgate, New York. Okay. And we met at Morristown. Okay. At a New Year's Eve party, as I said.
Morristown, New Jersey.
Morristown, New Jersey. Okay. She grew up in Morristown, and the woman who was throwing a party was her next door neighbor since she was like 2. Mm-hmm. And this woman's brother, I was in the Navy with. Oh, okay. And my father was living in Morristown. He'd gotten remarried at that point. Mm-hmm. And so we came down, and we met, and
that was the beginning.
That was
of
the
story. That's great. And were you expecting, like, when you met her, were you thinking like, oh, this could be something special?
It was a party.
Yeah. Well, when you met her, though, after meeting her and going on a date, or
Well,
was
so
it like pretty clear that this was going to be a long-term thing?
I think so.
Yeah.
You know, it's just there's not a lot of people that understand the way I think.
That's true. That's another marriage advice, right? Find someone who can understand a little bit of how you think.
You know, and she doesn't always understand how I get to a solution, but generally she knows that if I thought about something, that it was, you know, I had a process to get there.
In your own way.
In my own way.
Yeah. That's great. So you met, and then shortly after you came down to New Jersey?
So we met, and then I drove up to Colgate for a weekend to hang out with her, and then I actually got deployed. A submarine I was on at the time went off to a run under the Arctic ice.
Oh.
And so we went up to the North Pole.
Wow. It is a real place.
It is a real place. I have pictures. When she graduated, she went down and was working in Pennsylvania at a boarding school, sort of in the Allentown, Quakertown vicinity. And I was still in for another couple years at that point. And so we commuted back. I'd commute back and forth between Groton, Connecticut and Pennsburg, Pennsylvania. And then she decided to go to graduate school to get her PhD in applied math and moved to Long Island, Stony Brook, Long Island. And at that point, you know, she was young, I was young. We weren't sure where we were going, so we broke up for a couple of years while she did her PhD, most of her PhD.
Okay.
And then I moved, when I got out of the Navy, I went out to Illinois for 6 months working at a chemical manufacturing plant. And for various medical reasons, that job didn't work out, so I wound up coming back to Morristown.
Okay.
And again, one of her friends that she grew up with since she was like 2, you know, I happened to see her this woman at the supermarket, and I guess she sends Sue an email, said, you know, Tim's back in town.
Okay, so that reopened the door.
That reopened the door, and so we started dating again, and I took a job that moved me down to Baltimore, and when she graduated with her PhD, she started working for the Department of Energy. So we moved to Arlington, Virginia.
Lots of moves.
Lots of moves. We moved quite a bit there for a while.
Yeah. Was that easy? How did you manage that? What are some of the things that are important to you, or concepts that you kind of live by that allowed that to work as all those changes were happening?
I don't know. I think there's something that's inherent in our beings that's not terrified of change.
Okay.
There's a lot of people that just any change is concerning. Mm-hmm. And I don't know, I just look at what the change is that's involved and evaluate good or bad and go from there.
And then adapt.
And then it's apt.
Yeah.
Back then, of course, moving was easy because we didn't have anything. We were young and poor.
Right, you didn't have to get a U-Haul and pack everything.
Well, you get a U-Haul, but you got the cinder block and board shelves and her parents' furniture from the basement of their house.
Yeah, that's true.
At some point, she went to work for Weyerhaeuser Fine Paper. I had gone back to school at this point because we decided that we didn't want to get used to having 2 salaries.
Okay.
So she graduated school. When she was in school, finishing up school, I was working. And then when she started working, I started going back to college. I went to Northern Virginia Community College for a couple of years.
What'd you study there?
I was back into computer science again.
Okay.
But then she took a job with Weyerhaeuser Fine Paper up in King of Prussia, Pennsylvania. So we moved up there. I transferred to Westchester University of Pennsylvania, finished up my degree in computer science. And then we, about the same time, her parents moved down from New Rochelle, New York to Spring Lake Heights.
Oh, okay.
And so we're driving out here every weekend. And it just...
To visit her parents?
To visit her parents
and
go to the beach. And we just, we're driving out 295 one Sunday afternoon, staring at the sun glare, sitting in traffic, and just realized that we were always sad leaving the beach.
Isn't everyone always sad leaving the beach?
So we just started toying around with the idea of like, well, we could move there and then don't have to leave the beach.
Yep. And neither of you, it sounds like from what you shared, neither of you had ever lived at the beach
No,
yourselves.
I think growing up, I came to the Sandy Hook and the beach, I don't know, maybe twice.
Okay. Oh, really?
Yeah.
Kinlan's far, but like it's not too far.
It's not too far. It's just it wasn't what my parents had in mind most of the time.
Okay.
Now, Sue's mom grew up in, I want to say, Seagirt, Manasquan vicinity.
Mm-hmm.
So, she did a lot more of the beach. Her grandparents lived in Seagirt. So, all the holidays were at the beach.
She was used to it.
She was used to it.
So you said, okay, we don't like driving away. We like driving towards.
We like driving towards. About the same time, we had our first son, and
Okay.
having grandma 3 miles away is always handy.
Always, yes. Very nice. So at that point, is that when you moved? You had finished your degree already, and then you moved down to Bradley Beach?
Yeah.
Okay. How'd you settle on Bradley Beach?
We wanted to live in a town that had some diversity to it. Yeah, I didn't want to live in a town where the only place my kids are seeing other people of color is cutting the grass.
Mm-hmm. You wanted them to have people around them that looked like other people, like the community, to be a little bit more integrated.
Right. I didn't want them to think that New Jersey was the be all and end all of everything, and that this diversity is important. Their life experiences impacted how they think about things and how they do things, and in turn, the way they think about things and do things impacts how I think about things and do things. And that's the value of diversity.
Right.
Is everybody has something that can teach you.
Right. Absolutely. So you found that in Bradley Beach. There was
originally it was it's since gentrifying pretty significantly. I would tell you we couldn't afford to move there right now.
I was thinking about this the other day because to me, Bradley Beach is a gem. Like, I don't know that many people, a lot of people when they come down to move this way, they look at Spring Lake, they look like Spring Lake Heights, Manasquan. And I feel like Bradley Beach is this little kind of unknown. I mean, I think it's starting to get more known, and they're building up a lot of things on Main Street. So
there's a lot of work going on in Main Street trying to get it restored. This summer, this time last year when the world ended, Bradley Beach would have a population of about 3,000 people. And by the beginning of April, it was very obvious that everybody who had a summer home was down here.
Right.
Just the parking.
Right. Even though they weren't supposed to necessarily.
Right. Well, I don't blame them. If you're going to be in your third floor walk-up 800 square foot studio apartment and you got to telecommute to work, I'd much rather do it here.
Right. Totally. And, obviously, like, not to get into too much of the politics, but it's their home. They own it. They should be able to occupy it.
No, absolutely.
Yeah. So you found a lot of people instantly.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Which was nice. You like that the crowd of a little bit more. Obviously, everyone's kind of stuck inside, but,
it was just weird.
Yeah. There's not many people that are year-rounders.
No, by far. There's only, they have a K-8 school
right.
In town, and I want to say there's between 200 and 250 kids in the entire school.
Wow, that's small, yeah.
And
then they go to Manasquan, right? Do they go
Asbury
to
Park is actually our sending district, but
okay.
but since Asbury Park is an Abbott district, we don't have to send them there.
Okay.
So most go to Neptune.
Okay.
I think second most is Red Bank Regional.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that.
And then there's all the county VOTEC schools.
Now, where did your kids go?
My eldest son actually went to Bradley Beach through I want to say about 5th or 6th grade, and then just had some issues there, so he wound up going through I can't even think of the name of it, Collier High School.
Oh, okay.
Up behind where the old Marlboro Hospital used to be.
Right, yeah. To get a little more special attention.
He absolutely blossomed there. That was the best choice we could have made for him.
Was it a hard choice?
No. It wasn't working where we were.
Right, yeah.
And my youngest son is actually in Neptune High School now,
Okay.
and part time, and he also goes to an advanced manufacturing course through the Monmouth County Vocational School District.
Oh, neat. I think vocational avenues are more kids should think of those as like optional, especially because now college is, an arm and a leg and you're paying it until you, for some people own a house.
I've been trying to convince my son to, join a plumbers union and apprentice because we need a plumber in the family. I am not a good plumber.
That's like the one thing you're missing, like a skill set.
I learned how to be an electrician in the Navy, but and carpentry I've developed good enough skills at, but plumbing is not my thing.
So he's not. It sounds like he hasn't bought into the idea.
No.
You can keep working. He's still got some time to get in. Well, little nudges, but it sounds like you said with your parents too, letting them kind of grow into who they're meant to be. And figure
absolutely.
out their lives. So you settled on Bradley Beach,
mm-hmm.
and then where were you working at that time?
So we moved here. We bought the house in May of 2001.
Okay.
And I was working for a local internet service provider out in Pennsylvania.
Oh, wow.
And the plan, and I worked full up with the folks that own the company. Says, look, we're going to be moving here sometime this fall. I'm trying to find a job, but I wanted to get them set up so that they could, plan on getting me replaced or reorganizing how their business worked. Yeah. And then September 11th happened, and, the jobs market dried up. So we moved here. I actually didn't have a job. I owned two houses. Had a 6-month-old and no job.
Wow. Talk about stress.
A little bit.
You seem like someone who can handle it gracefully. So
I think Sue might disagree with that. Shortly thereafter, though, I did start working for a company called U.S. Filter up in Union.
Okay.
And they make shipboard equipment.
Okay.
Cathodic protection systems that are electronic systems that keep the hull from corroding.
Okay.
And also they make things called electrochlorinators. So they take seawater and they split it into chlorine gas and sodium hypochlorite. No, they make sodium hypochlorite. Basically it breaks apart the seawater and it makes bleach.
Oh, okay.
And then you would take this and you would re-inject it into your seawater stream, and it prevents the mussels and marine life from growing in your heat exchangers and clogging the pipes.
That sounds important.
That's a good thing because you don't want to. You just really don't want to have all your piping systems get clogged.
Yeah.
Traveling 95% of the time. So I was never home at this point.
Okay. And there was a baby at home.
And there was a baby at home. And thankfully, grandma lived 3 miles away.
Yeah.
Interesting work. I like going to sea on ships. I like working on ships. I like working with the crews on ships. But
I was going to ask you about that because I saw on your bio on the website that you were an Electricians Meet.
Yeah.
How did that happen, and tell me about that experience?
Well, so I said before that I went to Stevens Tech briefly and failed out after having discovered Manhattan, and so I went in the Navy and I went through their nuclear power program.
Okay.
Which is 6 months of really intense schoolwork and followed by another 6 months of hands-on training with land-based shipboard propulsion plants. You're actually working on the equipment that you're going to operate.
Okay. And at that point, you didn't require a degree to get into that program.
Oh no, there was more college dropouts in the Navy nuclear power program.
That's interesting. I wonder why that is. People wanted to get to work and learn on the job.
Well, I didn't want to. I didn't want to go back to school. I didn't want to pump gas. Or deliver newspapers, or wait tables, but I wanted to do something, and it's like, well, I'm going to go talk to recruiters. So I talked to all the recruiters, and the nuclear power thing sounded the most interesting.
Mm-hmm.
some point early on, I volunteered for submarines because the submarine force is all volunteer.
And it sounds cool.
And well, easily the best decision I made in my life. Well, certainly the top two, because I would tell you, hanging out with Sue for all these years is up there as well.
That's awesome. That's really sweet.
But it took me as sort of a directionless kid who didn't like school to begin with, and impressed this discipline that you need out of the military. But at the same time, the submarine service is probably has the least amount of military bearing out of any of the services in any of the branches.
Okay.
It's all that standing around and marching and saluting stuff. We're not very good at that.
Okay.
So I was in the Navy for, I say 10 years. It was just over 9, or just under 9, I forget.
And during those 9 years, what was like the day-to-day like? What were you doing?
Well, so the first 2 years was boot camping in all schools.
Mm-hmm.
I reported onto my first submarine, the USS Billfish, fast attack sub, in summer of 1984. And which is where I met my friend Ian, who introduced me to my wife Sue 2 years later.
Okay.
And you're just learning, you're working and you're learning, because the thing about submarines, it's the same with all ships, but it's more so with submarines, is you really need to know every system on board, and you need to know that everybody on board is going to work to get, if something bad happens, to get the ship on a roof. That's the key, to get the ship up on the surface.
Right.
And so you spend a lot of time studying systems, training, doing all these other things so you can become qualified in submarines. And, that's where you get your dolphins, the submarine warfare emblem. And that's indicative. That is telling everybody that the crew and the captain have faith in you that you were going to do your best to help everybody survive.
You know your shit.
You know your shit.
Okay.
The fast attack sub, there really wasn't a day-to-day routine, because you might go to sea for 2 days, you might go to sea for 2 weeks. We deployed for 6 months to the Mediterranean. Every day was different. You might, if there's a ballistic missile boat floating around, you might go out and connect up with them and sort of make sure that we didn't have any of our enemy submarines trailing them.
Okay. It sounds like it was interesting.
It was. Everything was different, and you're, here I am, 20 years old, and I'm operating a reactor powered steam propulsion plant, and I'm taking it apart, I'm fixing it, and putting it back together, and it works.
It sounds like it made you feel valuable.
It did. It absolutely did. And as an electrician on a submarine, you fix everything from toasters to turbines.
You got to eat.
You got to eat, but and there's just such a hard-working bunch of people, and they're so smart, and probably the best group of people I've ever worked with. And that's one of the things I liked working about in commercial nuclear power, because that's the sort of natural career pipeline. Is to go work at a reactor plant someplace, and so you continue to work with these intelligent, hard-working people that know how to have fun.
That's a good combination of people.
Yeah. So I did that through I want to say sometime in 1987.
Okay.
When after Sue and I had met, and I went back to school for 6 months, advanced electricians training. And then went on a ballistic missile submarine. I did 6 ballistic missile deterrent patrols. Wow. Where you go underwater for a period of time, and you sit there and wait for a launch order.
Wow. That seems also like, did it feel, you said you were with people that had fun and were enjoyable to be around. Was it also a little isolating because you were away from Sue?
It absolutely was, because back then the internet really didn't exist. Email certainly didn't exist. You'd get some news in from the radio broadcast, but really not very much. And there's no TV. Everybody watched the same movie the night before. So you've got this dearth of outside information, which, in normal people, that's what you talk about during the day.
Mm-hmm.
So we would get into these huge arguments about whether creamy peanut butter was better than chunky.
You would find something kind of
something. We had people who would read the dictionary.
You need to find some way of entertaining yourselves.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. So it sounds like a really valuable experience. And how did that kind of propel you? I feel like we've been talking and haven't really gotten to the good stuff about the distillery, but how did that kind of propel you? Where was the shift that happened when the distillery became, this, thought in your mind?
So we started, when we go on vacations as a family, we'd go up to Vermont camping for 2 weeks for a while. There's a cabin down in Luray, Virginia, we've been going to on New Year's Eve for 30 years, with friends. But when we go to these places, we take the kids to things they want to see, and then it's like, all right, well, we're going to go visit this craft brewery or this craft distillery.
Mm.
And we started talking with the people, and it's just, by and large, the people that run these places are pretty cool. Mm-hmm. They're very proud. They love what they do, so they're very happy and very proud to talk about it.
Mm-hmm.
And we just, that sort of planted the seed. About the same time, so I worked at Oyster Creek from 2003 to 2011. And briefly went to work for a company that did some consulting, and that wasn't a good fit. So I started working as a contractor down at Salem and Hope Creek in South Jersey.
Okay.
And the commercial nuclear power field had just run its course for me.
You were ready for
something I was ready
new.
For something else. I didn't like dealing with the stress of working in that environment anymore. The physical demands when you're doing a refueling outage, I was beyond that. Mm-hmm. So I went to work back again as a marine service engineer for this most recent company I worked for, Condition Analyzing Corporation, who actually used to have an office right over there.
Oh, okay.
And
time here.
And that was just, in a lot of ways, that was the best of both worlds, because I didn't really have a boss. I had a dispatcher.
Okay.
So I got trained up. And what I do is I go out on these ships and you take what are called predictive maintenance readings on the equipment in the engine room.
Mm-hmm.
So vibration data, maybe some infrared data, depending on what the customer wanted. And from that, we could tell how well the equipment's running and whether or not they need to prioritize maintenance, doing preventive maintenance on this machine or maybe some corrective maintenance.
So it was sort of independent.
It was absolutely independent. I'd get a phone call or an email. It's like, all right, you're going to get on this ship in Long Beach Harbor at this time, mm-hmm. and you're going to ride it to Bremerton, Washington, and then fly home. And
you were on your own.
And I was on my own,
okay.
So it's up to me. I get to decide how I do what I do.
Mm-hmm.
As long as I got the job done, it didn't really matter.
Okay.
And again, I'm working with the crews on the ships. These are people that they want to help me get my job done because they know ultimately I'm going to help them get their job done.
Mm-hmm.
But the travel, it was again, the travel was just brutal,
exhausting. Yeah.
And I flew home from I think I flew home from South America. And I was supposed to get in at 5 in the afternoon and didn't get home until 5 the following morning because,
wow.
Air travel is what air travel is.
Right.
And anybody that thinks that air travel is glamorous, if you do it a lot,
yeah,
no.
Definitely not.
And I got up in the morning at 10 o'clock in the morning. I just crashed on a couch, and I got up at like 10 o'clock in the morning, and Sue was in the kitchen, and she poured me a cup of coffee, and she handed it to me, and she goes, "Yeah, you should just quit your job and open a distillery."
Oh wow, it was just like that, just kind of like a
and
random thought.
I said, "All right, I'll do that right now," and she said no.
It was easy for you to make the decision when she.
Well, when when she said that, you know, it sort of opened the door to like, all right, well, let's look at this.
Mm-hmm.
You know, she's been, she grew up, her father was a golf pro, is a golf pro.
Okay.
They ran the pro shop at a country club up in Westchester, New York. And, you know, so she grew up with her family running their own business. And so she knew what that was like. And that had been a dream of hers for a while. She's been working at Brookdale for a long number of years. So she had the job, you know, with the benefits and everything else and the health insurance. So I took it seriously based on that comment. And I spent a lot of time on a lot of airplanes, writing down numbers on airplane napkins, trying to figure out if it worked. I kept working.
You kept working for a while. You didn't quit right away.
No, actually, I never did quit. I got laid off in March like the rest of the world did.
Oh, and was that the impetus?
We were close. We knew we were going to open in 2020. Mm-hmm. And again, I had talked to my bosses down there saying, this is the plan. I want to figure out a transition plan so that I'm not screwing you guys over.
Yeah.
But I'm going to leave. And so starting in January, I was working part-time.
To start the transition?
So starting to do the transition.
Yeah.
And they put me in a position where I was doing the data analysis instead of the data collection. So I wasn't flying that often anymore. So I had time to really finish things up and get things moving. But when I got laid off in March, it's like, all right, well, there's nothing standing in the way now. Let's go do this.
It's true. So had you at that point already picked, had you picked your location? Was it?
Well, so opening a distillery is not an event. It's a journey.
Isn't like all of life. I'm sure you learned things you didn't know, and but so how did you?
So we found a location in spring of 2018. It had been a used bicycle store.
Oh, okay.
And it closed very suddenly, and Sue was coming home from the supermarket one day and saw the for rent sign out front and came up to me and said, "You get the checkbook, go over there, find a landlord now. You're going to rent this building."
That's kind of inspiring to have someone like, you know, kind of keep you. I don't know. I feel like I'd be a little like nervous, but that's great that she almost was your.
She's always been my advocate.
Yeah, that's wonderful.
I would tell you that if she had a business card, which she chose, she said she didn't want business cards, but if she had a business card, her title would be the voice of reason.
Yes. Someone has to be.
Someone has to be.
Yeah. So she felt like that was the right location and it was a good opportunity.
It's right on 6th Avenue in Neptune, right across from the Bradley Beach train station.
Yep, 6th and Memorial.
Everybody who is coming from the north to go to the Bradley Beach gets directed to turn right at the cone zone and go right past my store.
Yep.
We're right next door to a great restaurant, the Grand Tavern.
Mm-hmm. I actually haven't been there yet. I want to try that.
It's fantastic. The hardest part of working next door to them is all afternoon when the weather's nice. I'm sitting outside and I'm smelling what they're cooking.
So it's wafting over to you. So you picked the location. Did you start as leasing it? Did you rent it?
I still rent the property now.
Okay.
We had a long 3-year lease.
Okay.
But once we got the property, then at that point you start all the permitting process. So the federal permit was easy. Mm-hmm. Locally, first I had to get approval from the zoning board in Neptune because nobody has distilling as an allowable use in any zone. Mm-hmm.
There's a little bit of red tape.
So there's red tape there. I had to going through finishing up zoning, getting the plans done and everything else done. We didn't finally complete that till October, I think.
Of the same year?
Of 2018.
Of 18, yeah.
And then finally, I can start construction to change the things I had to do.
The layout.
Do the things that the zoning board was making me do. Mm. Yeah, they're very helpful in helping me spend my money.
Townships tend to be good at that.
Yeah, that's fine. It's at the end of the day, everything worked out. Yeah. But I got my spring of 2019. I got my federal permit to distill, and then at that point I'm still waiting on the state. And I didn't hire a lawyer for any of this except for the zoning part because I knew that getting a use variance is a high bar. So I hired an attorney to help me with that. Everything else I've been doing on my own. Because in my opinion, I should be able to open a business. I'm a smart guy. I should be able to open a business without having to hire a law firm.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And there's things that having a lawyer would have expedited and would have made easier. There's somebody familiar with the process would have known what things could be done in parallel and what things needed to be done in series.
Okay.
And so I burned some time doing that for sure, doing things in series that I didn't have to. But when COVID rolled around, it's like, all right, well, let's pull out the stops. Let's get the state permit done. And I knew I was getting close.
At the point that COVID hit, and you were obviously already this far along, about a year and a half, it sounds like, into the process, was there any fear or doubts or anxiety when COVID hit?
Well, yeah. I mean, we had designed the business to have originally just as a tasting room, not serving drinks. I really didn't want to be a bartender. I didn't get into this because I wanted to be a bartender. I got into this because I wanted to make, a handcrafted rum and prove that I could make a nice quality product. So we were just set up for doing tastings, and it's small. The tasting room side of the building is probably 300 square feet, so the occupancy is 10 people. Well, they close down and they suddenly come to the realization, well, I can't have anybody in here, 25%. That means I can have what, 2.5 people? So that came along first. And then, nobody knew anything at that point. So we're all sort of driving blind, but It's like, well, we're going to keep going. We put all this time, money, and effort into it. We're going to open this business this year.
Good for you. And that's hard. I think that's hard because, like we've kind of discussed before the podcast, you've only ever known owning a business and operating during COVID, and that's
exactly.
That's a big deal.
I'm excited to think about
what it will be like after
not having to worry about whether or not I'll get called a knucklehead.
Right. Yeah. So you persevered. You kept going, and COVID obviously hit in March of last year, and you opened in
middle of August. We were really I really thought we were going to open for Memorial Day and have the whole summer, but unfortunately the state, with their financial bind they found themselves in, put everybody on rolling furloughs, including the ABC.
Oh, okay.
And so that just slowed down the process enormously. But at the end of the day, we were able to open for National Rum Day.
Okay. When is National Rum Day?
The 16th of August.
Okay, I did not know that.
Or 15th or 16th, I forget.
And you only distill rum, right?
We only distill rum. There's a couple of reasons why I did that.
Yeah, tell us.
The first one is my space is so small that I really don't have the room to deal with grains, cooking grains, and releasing the starch and converting the starch over to sugars and then feeding the yeast.
Okay.
But the other thing is there's nobody close by who has rum as their primary product. Most of the local distilleries don't do rum at all.
They focus more on what?
The whiskeys and vodkas and gins.
Okay.
And so we saw a gap in the market that
it's an opportunity
needed to be filled. And quite honestly, it's rum is probably the easiest thing to distill because you're already starting with sugar.
Okay.
So it was all a natural fit because I'm self-taught. I didn't go to distiller school to learn how to do this, and
learning as you go a little bit.
Learning as I go, for sure. I am, I've had people call me a master distiller, and it's like, oh no, that's not a term I would use for myself. There's more that I don't know than I do.
Well, nowadays, especially with like technology, I think you can call yourself a master of anything, and if you wrote it down on your profile,
I make a simple product using a simple process, and I wouldn't want to dilute the term for those people that truly know how to operate their equipment, what it's capable of doing, and what the impact of different things are on a process and on a product.
Yeah. So tell us about, you know, I had the opportunity to taste some, all very delicious. And I was going to bring in, I was like, it's early in the morning. I don't know about that. And I know, you know, I'll probably be back soon. So tell us how you picked the flavors that you have and which ones they are.
Well, so one of the things that we didn't like about most rums is how sweet they are.
Mm-hmm.
Most commercial rums, you go to a liquor store, they add quite a bit of sugar or sweeteners to them for some reason that I don't understand. So we decided we wanted to stay away from that, but there was, we knew we needed to do a spiced rum flavor, certainly.
Mm-hmm.
And so we tried a bunch of different ones. Shipwreck up to that point was my favorite, a nice aged spice rum, real nice product. But again, it's very, very sweet, but it's citrusy, a hint of cinnamon and some other things. So Sue started doing her research and coming up with recipes, potential recipes. There was a point we had mason jars all over the house.
You just became a tasting room in the house.
We became a tasting room in the house. I just go buy, you know, I'd go buy cheap rum at the liquor store. And it's like, all right, let's try this. Let's try that. Because you're not allowed to distill until the ABC says you're allowed to distill. So I've got, you know, $12,000 worth of stills sitting there that I look at every day and I can't use.
Yeah. So you just kept tasting.
So she kept tasting and perfecting, and then, you know, we started making sure we could ramp it up a little bit. When I finally was able to distill, starting in June, they let me start distilling, not selling yet, but start distilling. You know, we made our first full size batch, and we tweaked it in from there, and we really got it tuned in at that point.
Mm-hmm.
But it's been fun.
Yeah.
You know, that's the adventurous piece of it. You know, Sue in a lot of ways is the creative branch of the business, because I'm an engineer.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, all right, here's a problem.
How to put it together.
Here's a problem. Here's how you fix the problem.
Right.
Which again is another reason why I don't want to be a bartender, because a bartender, really good bartender, is an artist, not an engineer.
Okay. So, and that kind of shifted, of course, like you said. And you also have another flavor.
We've got another flavor. We've got a coffee flavored rum. We had tasted one from Maggie's Farm Distilling out of Pittsburgh vicinity. It's a coffee rum, but again, it was sweet. It wasn't as sweet as Kahlua, but it was sweeter than we liked it. And it's like, well, let's try this. Let's see what we get. And so, you know, so crushed up a bunch of coffee beans and put them in a mason jar and put some rum in and let it sit there for a couple of days. It's like, wow, this is good.
And that's how that kind of was born.
And that's how that was born.
Wow. And then just perfected that along the way as well.
And, you know, it took, again, you take a little bit of time to tweak it to get the recipe right.
Mm-hmm.
And then our other flavor that we have is just our silver. It's a typical light rum.
Right.
We do have some rum aging at the moment. We've got 30 or 40 gallons sitting in oak barrels that we're going to pull out soon, so we can have our gold, which is really, really nice and smooth.
That sounds really good. Back. When is that supposed to be released?
We had some for Christmas and sold out. And I'll have some more for probably the middle of May.
Okay, I'll have to mark that on my calendar.
And then we'll have rolling product through the year. At that point, I'm bringing in barrels periodically. Yeah. So as I open some, I'll fill some.
Okay. So what has if you look back on this journey and the journey to come, you know, what keeps you going? Because I can kind of sense a few things that I think seem like important to you as a business owner. And, you know, what would you say are the things that, like, this is really why I do this and what makes me get up in the morning and keep at the business?
One of the things so going back to my days as a marine engineer, you know, my last job before we finally opened the distillery, one of the things I really liked about that job, as I told you, was I had no boss. I had a dispatcher. It's, here's your task, here's your time frame, go do it. Mm-hmm. And so I was the one responsible for making the decisions on how things got done, what order they got done, doing whatever I needed to do to complete my task of testing, sometimes several hundred machines in a fairly short period of time. And that's what I truly like about running the business. I like being the guy that at the end of the day, it's like, all right, we got to make a decision. All right, it's on me. And if I don't like the decision, all I got to do is go in the bathroom and stare in the mirror and then I can go yell at the boss. And,
but there's, for you,
it's finding something to collaborate with Sue on beyond the children. They're 17 and 19 at this point.
Creating your own legacy together of something you created,
Yeah, absolutely.
On your own, regardless of kind of how big or where it goes, but just the value of doing it and doing it together.
Right. That's awesome. Making a quality product, making it by hand. It's everything I do is pretty much by hand.
Yeah. What I love about the people that I've interviewed so far, including you, is just the sense of passion for the work, right? It's not, they don't talk about, well, I wanted to open this business because this was the fastest way to make a lot of money, or it was all about the numbers. It seems to me, talking to you, you can tell that this is something you really love because you have the independence, but also you enjoy perfecting something. And I'm curious, like, your advice for people who, whatever the industry is, that are looking to start their own business, young or older entrepreneurs, what's your advice for them getting started?
Well, so the first piece is do your research to make sure that it makes sense, right? Even running rough numbers, figuring out the profitability, making assumptions for what you're going to pay for your utilities and your insurance and all these other things. Try and
the overhead costs.
Do all your due diligence up front. Do something that you love doing. Be prepared to do things that you don't love doing, but you got to do them anyway. And I told you when you stopped in the shop over the weekend, the first thing I do every morning is scrub the toilet, and the last thing I do every day is mop the floor.
Yeah, I love that.
And I'm going to keep doing it. And I've scrubbed the toilet an awful lot in the last 6 months, but it needs to get done.
Yeah. It's not always glamorous.
It's not glamorous. You have to be prepared to put in whatever time you have to put in. And
it sounds like you've had a good amount of patience too, because it's roughly 2.5 years since you signed that check.
It'll be 3 years in April since I signed the first rent check.
Yeah.
And we're up for renewal.
That probably went by fast too.
It did. Parts of it did.
Yeah.
I was traveling through a lot of that time, and that was a problem. Trying to manage contractors when you're 100 miles off the coast of Africa is challenging.
Just a little bit. Different time zone in the sea and all of the things that come along with that.
Luckily those were always cruise ships, so I could get phone calls and things. But stuff like that is just it's a challenge.
Yeah. What do you love about the community here in Bradley Beach?
Well, so I do like the community a lot. I don't know if I told you this or not. I'm on the borough council.
Oh, no. Okay.
But Sue and I have both been involved in local politics. She was the president of the Board of Education for a long number of years. And starting in January last year, I got elected to the borough council.
Wow.
Because I needed something else to do.
you were feeling bored. So
so there's a lessons learned, right? So we're trying to get all the construction work done through the fall of 2019, and I'm spending every weekend out knocking on doors.
Yeah. Wow.
What I like about the community is, the business is on the border of Neptune and Bradley Beach,
right.
and they're two very disparate communities.
Yes.
Bradley Beach is this snoozy little beach community with a great set of restaurants and things, but really leg cramp. It's a quiet town, especially in the wintertime. Whereas Neptune is just it's a hard work work and get it done kind of place.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's one of the things we liked about putting the distillery where it is, because it sort of combines those
Bringing
two
the communities
things
together.
You know, it's you know, have a get it done attitude, but have fun getting it done.
I love that. Okay, so taking sort of the concepts, the personalities, you're saying, like,
right.
that get it done. Okay.
By and large, the people in Bradley Beach are friendly. Everybody walks places.
Yeah.
It's a very dog friendly community. You know,
Mm-hmm.
there's dogs absolutely everywhere.
Yep.
And it's just great. You know, everybody spends all the time outside. There's front porches. Almost all the houses have front porches, so people hang out on their front porches. So, you know, you have neighbors that are sitting on their front porches chatting about
Mm-hmm.
things. Whereas, you know, with the invention of air conditioning, most people sit inside and don't talk to their neighbors anymore.
Yeah. So you still have that feel.
Oh yeah,
there.
absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
It's very much a small town feel, and it is a community.
Yeah, definitely. That's awesome. I think it's nice to have that combination too. And I feel like we could go on for like 4 hours because I have like a million more questions. But I know we're wrapping up. So I actually have what I call my fast 5,
Okay.
which are just like quick answers or quick questions. And, you know, you can answer them or if you want to come back to one. So the first is your current guilty pleasure.
My current guilty pleasure. I would tell you my current guilty pleasure are sausage and egg McMuffins.
Nice. Okay. Which of the 3 rums is your favorite?
I'm going to have to go with the spiced.
Okay. That's the one I got. I like that one too. I'm sorry. Who would you love to have a meal with, alive or dead?
Ruth Bader Ginsburg.
Oh, really? You know, I was thinking about her actually when you were talking, because when we were talking about marriage, I was recently watching a video. She was speaking at, I don't remember where it was, but she said, in life, the best thing you can do is be deaf just a little bit.
Yeah.
At home and at work.
I think there's some truth to that.
Yeah, I love that. I love that quote. Okay. Any specific question you would ask her?
You know, I would just... she led such a fascinating life.
Mm-hmm.
You know, talk about a groundbreaking individual. You know, going to Harvard Law School with kids,
Mm-hmm.
with her husband.
Mm-hmm.
You know, having her sights set very early on equality issues and using these sort of counterintuitive cases to drive her agenda through the course of her career. You know,
Right.
we're, you know, defending white men in something that you shouldn't think they would have to be defended through.
Mm-hmm.
And I just think she's a fascinating individual. I would love to just sit and talk to her and just like what we're doing here and see where the conversation runs.
Yeah, I would agree. I would have probably also loved to talk to her. Okay, any book or TV show that you're watching right now that you're into?
I just finished with watching Sense8 on Netflix.
What's that about?
It's about a group of individuals around the whole world that are psychically connected.
Oh.
And there's this, I'm not sure if it's governmental, there's this quasi-governmental corporate cabal that is trying to do bad things.
Okay. So they're using their powers to
help each other
help
out
each
through
other.
things, you know. So you know, one of the individuals is a police officer. There's a trans woman. There's a Korean woman who's a banker who went to jail to cover up crimes that her brother did. There's a bus driver in Nairobi. There's a Spanish film actor who's gay.
Very different. And what's it called?
Sense8. Sense and the number 8.
All right, I'm gonna have to check that one out. I haven't seen it.
It's a bit trippy.
Okay.
But that was just very interesting because they can go, you know, they all have their individual skill sets, and then they can go to whoever's in trouble and use that skill set to get them out.
Yeah.
You know, so there's an East German mobster
Okay.
who really doesn't have a problem being violent when the situation calls for it.
Okay.
And
Very
so,
different people together. That's cool. I'll check it out. And what is your current life motto?
my current life motto, I would, I thought about that one because you sent it to me, and I have two, and I've come to the realization that they're really one.
Okay.
The first one is is that your friends are the family that you get to pick.
That's a good one.
And the other side of that is that you always have to take care of your friends because you never know when you're gonna need them to take care of you.
Okay.
And if you think about it, those two really are the same, two sides of the same coin, because you're treating your friends like you're treating your family.
Right. It's a yin and yang of relationships.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah, and especially now, I think we've learned how important friendships are and how much we need those connections. I mean, it's a huge part of why I started doing this, just because I wanted the connections to come back.
Oh yeah, it's been an interesting year.
It definitely has, and I feel like we could, like I said, go on tons and tons of more time. And I think if you're up for it, I'd love to have you back at some point, and we can talk more and have some more interesting stories. So thank you so much for coming on. It's been a pleasure. I've really enjoyed it. The time went by so fast. And can't wait to see you in the shop soon.
Oh, it's been awesome. Thanks.
Yeah, no problem.